Mass shootings, as defined by a mass murder carried out by a single vengeful individual in one unique event, would seem to be a purely American phenomenon. If you bring to mind instances of crazed mass shooters, you immediately think of Columbine, Virginia Tech, the Las Vegas shootings, the McDonald's massacre, and so on. And whilst the USA certainly seems to have the most infamous incidents of mass shootings, it is definitely not alone in suffering from this phenomenon. Mass shootings have occurred all over the world. In fact, the deadliest mass shooting in history occurred in 2011 in Norway, which is generally considered to be one of the safest countries in the world. The Dunblane Massacre occurred on March 13, 1996 in the small Scottish town of Dunblane, when 43-year-old Thomas Hamilton entered the local primary school and killed 16 people before killing himself. Although in terms of fatalities, this is nowhere near the top of the list, I personally find this incident to be utterly heartbreaking and tragic. Hamilton went there with one intent: to kill as many young preschoolers as he could. I cannot even begin to describe the horror and revulsion I feel at what this man did. A despicable act that any rational or feeling human being would never, ever contemplate. This was not an easy video for me to make. Thomas Hamilton was born in 1952 in Glasgow. His life got off to a strange start after he was legally adopted by his maternal grandparents at the age of 2. So he grew up thinking that his mother was his sister and that his grandparents were his mother and father. He was eventually told the truth when he was 22. Now, whether this had any effect upon him mentally at the time, that's not clear. As a teenager, he seems to have been one for joining clubs. He was a member of the local boys' brigade. He was a member of the local rifle club, and he was an assistant Boy Scouts leader. And by 1973, he was the leader of a scout troop in Stirlingshire. But rumours and complaints about his behaviour around boys were becoming numerous. Apparently, he was showing them how to use guns and rifles, which as a scout leader he shouldn't have been doing, as well as his more nefarious tendencies of apparently getting a little bit too hands-on with the boys. By 1974, his scout leadership had been revoked. The reason given by the county commissioner was that Hamilton's moral intentions towards young boys were not innocent, and he was unsuitable to be around young men. Strangely, after the school massacre, the official reason given by the Boy Scouts Association for Hamilton's dismissal was simply that he was just incompetent. He was well known in Dunblane, often described as a loner, a bit of a weirdo, a classic nerd complete with anorak. The local kids even had a nickname for him. They called him Mr. Creepy. But he had another side to him too. He could appear respectable, dressed in shirt and tie, and he could be quite convincing and persuasive. Many people did believe he was the innocent victim of unsubstantiated gossip. Over the years, his passion for being around young boys had not diminished, and he fought a tireless campaign to set up and run youth groups, and to be reinstated in the Scouts. Hamilton organised and ran various boys' clubs, but the usual complaints soon surfaced, and over time many of his clubs were shut down. Although many people suspected Hamilton of being a closet paedophile, nothing was ever proven, and having his clubs shut down solely on the basis of rumours without proof enraged him. Feelings of resentment and persecution were obviously building up within him. An excerpt from a letter he wrote to the Queen gives a glimpse into the mind of a man who felt he was being unjustly treated. I have been involved with the organisation of boys' sports clubs for over 20 years, and the rumours circulated by officials of the Scout Association have now reached epidemic proportions across Central Region. As well as my personal distress and loss of public standing, this situation has also resulted in the loss of my business and ability to earn a living. Indeed, I cannot even walk the streets for fear of embarrassing ridicule. All those years of resentment, unfulfilled ambitions and self-pity were about to explode in a way that no one could have foreseen. On the morning of March 13, 1996, Thomas Hamilton selected 4 handguns from the collection of the 6 that he owned and 743 rounds of ammunition. He ate his breakfast, he went outside to scrape the ice from the windscreen of his van, and then he drove the 5 miles to the local primary school. He arrived around 9:30 a.m, parked by the telegraph pole, where he proceeded to cut the phone lines using a pair of pliers. He then calmly walked into the school and headed for the gym, where teacher Gwen Mayer had taken her class of 28 kindergarten children for their PE lesson. Upon entering the gym, Hamilton was confronted by Eileen Harold, the PE teacher in charge of that morning's lesson. Hamilton's response was to immediately open fire, first shooting and seriously wounding Eileen Harold, and then firing rapidly into the gym. Teacher Gwen Mayer was shot and killed instantly, and PE assistant Mary Boll was shot in the head and legs, but incredibly survived, bravely shielding other wounded children as they sought shelter in the large store cupboard located adjacent to the gym. Hamilton was firing indiscriminately at the children in the gym, wounding almost all of them and killing one child outright. Having shot everyone he could see, Hamilton advanced upon a group of 16 wounded, terrified children who were gathered near the centre of the gym, whereupon he shot them all again at point-blank range. An older pupil walking past the gym outside stopped to look through the window to see what was happening. Hamilton saw him and opened fire. Luckily he missed, and the pupil, wounded by flying glass, ran to raise the alarm. Thomas Hamilton continued to shoot, breaking windows and aiming at any moving thing that he saw. Next, he briefly left the gym by the fire doors and headed outside, firing at some of the older pupils he saw in an adjacent classroom, and firing into the school library, where he wounded another staff member. Hamilton then re-entered the gym, took a fresh pistol from his belt, put the gun in his mouth, and shot himself. He died instantly. He had shot a total of 32 people, killing 16 preschool children and their class teacher, Gwen Mayer. It was Britain's worst mass shooting, and it was all over in under 5 minutes. Indeed, by the time that Hamilton shot himself, ending his insane rampage, the police hadn't even been called. Such was the speed with which events unfolded. Police and medical services were on scene minutes later, with the injured being rushed to the nearest hospitals, but the damage was done. 17 people were dead, a town was in shock, and as the news spread, the whole country was suddenly aware of a small Scottish town called Dunblane and the terrible tragedy that had happened there. The nation's grief was palpable. How could this have happened? Who was to blame? And how could it be prevented from happening again? Within weeks, a petition launched by the national newspapers calling for stricter gun control laws had reached nearly 500,000 signatures. A pressure group, the Snowdrop Petition, was formed, swelling the number of signatures to over 700,000. Initially reluctant to pass any such laws, the UK government nevertheless relented and enacted legislation to ban personal ownership of handguns. Over 160,000 firearms and many tons of ammunition were handed in to the authorities. The Dunblane Massacre fundamentally changed gun ownership in the UK, basically outlawing it for the average citizen. In a controversial move, the official inquiry into the Dunblane Massacre, known as the Cullen Report, had its findings subjected to a 100-year secrecy ban. The official report will not be fully released until the year 2096. This secrecy has fueled rumours of a cover-up of police incompetence and the possibility of Hamilton's close contact with high-ranking politicians and Freemasons. Whatever the truth of the matter, the pain and anguish of the Dunblane tragedy is not forgotten, and nor should it ever be. Sometimes the evil that people are prepared to commit is beyond me, and, as a parent myself, how anyone affected manages to carry on after something like this, I find truly incredible.